give us in the five-way test, pledge, and prayer. And then Pamela Smith is going to do guest introductions. And then after Pam, membership recruitment member of the committee, Mitzi Tharp, is going to introduce our newest member.
Good afternoon. Okay. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And is it fun? Okay, please bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, accept our thanks for this day and all of its blessings. We ask that you will guide and direct our club, its leaders, and our actions. Grant that each of us may feel our responsibility to Rotary, to our community, to our state, and to our country. Bless our fellowship today and bless this food by the nourishment of our bodies. Amen. All right, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. For all of the people who are sleeping in the room, good afternoon. It's a great day to be a Rotarian, Club 99. Yes, I'm extra, I do admit. It's my pleasure to introduce our special guest today. We're going to ask that you please stand along with the Rotarian who is your host. And we ask our members to please refrain from applause until we have announced all of our wonderful guests. Visiting from the Oak Lawn Rotary Club in Hot Springs, we have Ms. Karen Kitchens. Guest, Lizzie Sullivan, Brad Sims, and Andrew Weber are the guests of Billy Rohrenbeck. Shoshana Washington is the guest of Misty Tharp. Todd Rice, guest of Amy Mines. Debbie Teague, guest of Michael Teague. Kennedy Caston, I hope I got that right, guest of Annabeth Gorman. Jake Spradlin, guest of Christina Bowlhouse, and certainly last but not least, Heather Horrell, guest of Beth Sigler. Let's give all of our guests a nice round of applause. Thank you for coming.
I have the loudest shoes on today, so excuse me. So today we have Tanner Measle. Did I pronounce that correctly? So I'm pleased to, pleased to welcome Tanner Measle to Club 99. He's sponsored by Matt McClendon. Tanner has a BA in marketing with a minor in speech communication from TCU. He spent 24 years at Little Rock-based DSG, which provides consulting, training, video production, and software solutions to corporations like Siemens, J.B. Hunt, Boeing, Adobe, and Pfizer. In 2010, Tanner became one of the firm's owners and ran sales and marketing as a chief revenue officer. The firm was sold to Corporate Visions in 2022, with Tanner leading the business integration for 12 months. In March of 2023, he decided to take a break from business to focus on family and other interests. Tanner is board president for Immerse Arkansas, a nonprofit focused on helping youth 14 through 24 overcome any number of serious life challenges and grow into thriving adults. He and his wife, Valerie, have adult twins and a kindergartner who keep them young and quite active. I can just imagine. For fun, Tanner likes snow skiing, backpacking, fly fishing, and reading. Please join me in welcoming Tanner Measle to Club 99.
All right. Well, thank you, Debbie and Pam and Mitzi, and welcome, Tanner. Go Frogs. All right. So we have had so much fun happening in Club 99, and April is packed with stuff. So we've got a few announcements of just some really fabulous stuff that's coming up. But first, I'd like to give a big thanks to Don Cole. You guys know he's Club 99's grill master. He came out Friday. We did a dedication of Miss May's Habitat for Humanity house. So there was about 15 or so Rotarians that about 3 weeks to a month ago, worked on the house, and we got to dedicate that on Friday. Thanks to Dan for setting that up. But it was a really fabulous time. It was so great to be there with other Habitat volunteers who had worked lovingly on that house. And then she had a ton of family and friends. So thanks for everybody that came out. Special thanks to Dawn for grilling burgers and dogs for everybody. So I'm now going to ask Service Chairman Dan Parker to come up, make a couple more announcements. And then after that, Laza's going to come up and make a fun announcement. So I'll turn it over to Dan.
Hello, fellow Rotarians with a heart for service above self. I want to let everybody know our next project coming up. It's a limited number. We've already got 8 volunteers assigned to go into the Salvation Army headquarters, and they're going to be teaching some life skills to some of those residents, those that want and deserve the ability to pursue independent living. These life skills are going to include anything from banking, checking accounts, savings account, mental health, wellness, how to have friends, community involvement, just like what we do here at Rotary. How do you give back, even when you're in those types of circumstances? I think that's so important. Dietary and how to cook and feed your family on a budget. I'm going to recognize the 8 volunteers I have. They'll be there every Wednesday, starting this Wednesday for about an hour to do the teaching, very interactive sessions. That's Ellen Cockrell, Chris Mangum, Jay Gadberry, Ross Burnett, Quentin Kane, Becky Finney, Terry Hollingsworth, and Mason Ellis. So special appreciation for y'all stepping up and doing this for a very worthy cause. And then the last thing I want to mention on behalf of myself and Dunbar Chair Mitzi Tharp, Dunbar has nominated us through the volunteers in public schools to receive an award. And we've been nominated. We haven't won it yet. And who knows if we will, but there'll be a dinner on April the 16th. We'll attend. I know Mitzi and Natalie and Karen will be there as well, but we're just so pleased that Dunbar has taken the steps and the effort to recognize all the volunteers who've done anything from mentoring a young middle school person to going to a tailgate for a football game to preparing 400 backpacks before they start the school. So a lot going into that school, a school that really craves that type of attention and service. Thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon, Club 99. As you can see, past President Kenny is just right at it and showing you how to play. Oh, and playing pickleball. No, I'm just here to invite you all to join us on Friday, April 19th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. for burgers with a side of pickleball. It's going to take place at the Little Rock Athletic Club pickleball facility. And let me tell you, I went to attend their opening, and it is a world-class facility for pickleball. I am not an avid pickleball player. I've played pickleball maybe 10 times in my life, but it is very fun. And let me just tell you why, as President Natalie would say, an event not to be missed. I know it's a Friday night and everyone's got fun plans on Friday night, but Why should you join? It's ideal for all age level, all skill level. And like I said, I've never played pickleball before. And the first time I played, I had a blast. It's very intensive. It's healthy. You get to move your feet, move your arm, just have fun. It's social. You get to, the first time I played was actually invited by past President Kenny being a Rotary person that he is, very hospitable and supporting camaraderie and all of that. And so I go for this friendly pickleball party. Session with him. He shows up in a muscle tee, and nothing is a thing as like everything is a competition to past President Kenny. So if anything, other than it being very accessible, you have a lot of fun. It'll be social. You get to move a little bit. You can invite your friends, your family. It can be date night. It can be turned into a family outing night and play pickleball together. All of that, we can accommodate all of that. So I just want to like invite you all. And if anything, beating past President Kenny while he's wearing a muscle tee is very, very satisfying. Thank you all very much. See you all on Friday, April 19th.
All right, guys, that's not to be missed. Great job, President Kennedy. Kenny. All right, awesome. Okay, so a few more events just to remind you about. On that same day, April 16th, we're having a pickleball party that night, but there's also book club at lunchtime at Maya's house. It's going to be wonderful. If you've been reading, the April book is The Loudest Duck by Laura Liswood. So definitely sign up for that. Link will be in your newsletter, but that'll be a great day of Rotary and kind of going from intellectual to physical fun that night. So we also have been asked by Gibbs Magnet Elementary. So as you know, and Dan talked about, we do a ton with Dunbar. We also do a lot of different things with Gibbs Magnet that we've done on and off for years. They have their school's International Fest on May 3rd from 5 to 7. And they have asked our club to volunteer that night to help with the many activities that they have for all their families that come for International Fest. It's a fun night. So if you can make time from 5 to 7 on May 3rd, Karen has sent out the link, but she'll send it again this week in our newsletter. So please check your calendar, see if you can carve out 2 hours to help Gibbs. All right. So for our guests, each year we choose a theme, and this year's theme for Rotary Club of Little Rock is the power of fun. And so I give a short tip here. As we've been learning about the power of fun together, fun can come in all shapes and sizes, right? And what we think is fun and creates those real moment of joys can be very different for everybody in this room. So with today's program and then a really fun member video that you're going to see in a few moments, I spent some time thinking about collecting, the art of collecting, which if you've taken Catherine Price's fun audit in the back of the, or on her website from the Power of Fun, she's lists a bunch of different things that could possibly be fun, and collecting is in there. Collecting is a huge pastime for many, many people. There's thousands and thousands of things that people collect. In this club alone, we have a ton of collections. Members who collect guitars, campaign pins, cigars, concert ticket stubs, ice cube molds, bank trucker hats, holiday ties, board games, magazines, and more. So lots of collectors in this group. I've been a collector of some pretty random things in my life. As you can see up here, rocks when I was young. I don't know what it was, but those like little boxes of glassy rocks that you get at like a souvenir stand in like New Mexico or somewhere. We used to go road tripping all the time with my family, and I loved those. I thought they were so cool. So then I got into college phase of a random collection of beads where I thought I was going to start making jewelry. And I think I made like one necklace from a whole bunch of beads that I collected. So I don't even know where those beads are now. In my 20s and 30s, I collected like vintage snack trays that I would use at all the baby and wedding showers for my friends, and they were so cute. Karen literally just told me she has a stack of 24 of that exact pattern up there that she's going to gift me. And I was like, Jason Gadati is going to kill you. Please, please do not give those to me. But, and even Beanie Babies, y'all, not just the regular Beanie Babies, but I collected Disney Beanie Babies. Like you had to go to the Disney store back when there were Disney stores at every mall, or go to the parks and get these special things. crazy. And then now I collect Disney pins with my daughter because she loves to go and collect them when we go to the parks together and trade them. And so I do that with her. But I think, you know, for me, the fun part of collecting things was always the thrill of the hunt, you know, really creating my own mini adventure of oftentimes with friends or siblings that shared the same kind of passion. And we would, you know, look for these things and it was super fun. Collecting things can definitely be what we've been talking about, a true fun moment. So it's about connection. So whether you're trading cards at an event, for those of you who trade baseball cards and stuff, or stand in line for the release of the new Beanie Baby, or stumbling upon a beautiful snack tray in a random flea market. So it's about, you know, that connection with other people. It's also about playfulness because a lot of us collect things that really brought joy to us in childhood. So, you know, all of those people who collect records and baseball cards and all those different things, those are a lot of fun things that a lot of you did when you were kids. And then it's really about flow too, because when you're in the hunt for the latest item to add to your collection, you're definitely in flow. So today's program is perfect because clearly it's about a collection that I'm sure has brought those collectors many rounds of connection and playfulness and flow as they've built those collections. And you will see that in our member video here that we're about to play. So if you're still trying to figure out in your fun audit, maybe what might be fun for you, maybe think about collecting. We've got Billy here with Titanic memorabilia. We've got Amy with ice cube molds. We've got Steve with holiday ties. I mean, there's a lot to choose from, guys. And you might even choose today's members collection. So let's roll that, Jake.
Hi, I'm Jessie Wilson. I am the partner and vice president of client engagement for Dale Carnegie Training of the Mid-South. I have been with Dale Carnegie for over 14 years. I work directly with clients on really turning potential into performance on the people development side. But we're here to talk about some fun. And that fun is, of course, Barbie. Barbie is something that is ingrained into my life in so many different ways. We got to go back to little Jessie. And within that little Jessie, I found a love of Barbies. My parents got me to be collecting Barbie comic books. I would love to read through all about Barbie. Literally, I remember telling my mom, "Why did you name me Jessie?" I wanted to be named Kelly because of course I'm a Kelly. When I was in 2nd grade, my Christmas gift, and I would show you this video, but it's on VHS and currently probably in an attic. A really close family friend built a custom Barbie house for me, down to details where the front door is wood and it has all of my initials. The wallpaper in the rooms was my baby wallpaper, down to my baby carpet. And it is 5 foot tall. It was as tall as me, and you would have thought I won the lottery in 2nd grade. And my friends loved to come over and play Barbies because it was an experience. It wasn't a plastic Barbie house. It was a custom wood, massive Barbie house. And then I started collecting Barbie trading cards, and that just became a love for it. Well, you know, I got older and probably playing with Barbies, it wasn't a thing for a little bit until I started building my office. And I was talking to one of my sister-in-laws and I asked her, I was like, "How do I design my office?" And she said, "You gotta take those Barbie comic books out of the attic." And so I custom framed each Barbie comic book. Now, I had to only choose a selective few because it would be a little bit overwhelming for the amount that I had. I did look like a little bit of a Barbie fanatic when this Barbie movie came out, but I just have a love for that. And what more fun is there than Barbie? And so now when you think of me, you may still think of Dale Carnegie, but you gotta think Barbie.
I love that, Jesse. My best friend collected Barbie too, and she had an amazing house that we were super jealous of too. So I love that. All right, so now we're going to get to our program. I'd like to invite Club 99er Suzanne Payton and Chairman of our Rotary Club of Little Rock Foundation to introduce today's program.
Thank you, President Natalie. I'm going to introduce our moderator today. Good afternoon. I'm excited this afternoon to introduce to you Billy Rohrenbeck. First, I'll tell you what you probably already know about him. Billy's the owner of Little Rock's Pulaski County Title. He is a Little Rock native. He has been president of the board of directors for the Arkansas Land Title Association. He's been named Title Man of the Year in 2021. He also serves on several community boards, including the Arkansas Healthcare Transparency Initiative Board, the UALR College of Business Real Estate Advisory Board, the UALR Foundation Funding Board. In addition to being a member of Club 99, he was a Leadership Greater Little Rock Class 34 graduate and currently serves on the Alumni Board and is co-chair of Class 39. Now, let me tell you what I want you to know about Billy. When we participated in Class 34 together, Billy Rohrenbeck and I were put together on a team that had the Central High neighborhood assigned to us for our history project. And if any of you know Billy, this was a dream assignment for him. He is into history. And when I say into it, I mean into it, all in. And that's how it went. Our team spent every weekend from September through December meeting with residents, going on field trips, and planning. Actually, we have a couple of our team members here. Liza and VG both were on our team for that project, and we had a blast. You know, with his title and property background, Billy dug way down into the history of the neighborhood and found out all kinds of amazing facts from yesteryear. You've seen some examples of some of those last year in President Peacock's Illuminate the Rock segments. Remember how interesting they were, some of those stories? Remember what Babe Ruth played baseball at West End Park, which is now the Central High site? Billy found that out for us. For our team project, he offered the use of his office facilities, his equipment, his resources. He was all in. Now, I love a high-performance team and all-in folks, so we became fast friends. You can tell we even dressed alike today. I had no idea. So everything he does, this year I've been thrilled to serve with him in leadership, Greater Little Rock's Class 39th. I'm the chair, and he's been my co-chair, and then we've been thrilled to work together again. Everything he does is high level, so I have no doubt you're going to enjoy this program. If you know his love of history, you won't be surprised at all to learn of his interest in the Titanic. He doesn't just read about history, he joins in the community. So we're excited to have him introduce us to some of the experiences he's had and the people he's met in the Titanic history enthusiast community. So Billy, I'll let you introduce the rest of the program.
I perma-smile after that introduction. Suzanne and I had a blast during Class 34, and I do have a love of history, and I guess that makes sense as a member of the title insurance industry. After all, we research and insure history. But that love of history starts long, long time ago. I was fortunate to have some grandparents that, I was the oldest grandchild, so I got spoiled. And my grandparents, my grandfather in particular, was into history, and we would travel the United States and go to different Civil War forts and national parks and that kind of stuff. So I was really lucky. But I can remember at a young age, probably 6 or 7, at my grandparents' house, laying on the floor, probably past my bedtime, watching A Night to Remember, which was a long a movie that was produced, I think back in the 50s actually, about the Titanic. And there it went. And I don't know why I fixate on certain things, but that's one of them that I just like went straight to. And I can remember riding to school, elementary school, and wearing my dad out day after day, that I wanted to know more and more, which probably far exceeded his understanding of the Titanic, but I wanted to know more and more and more about it. So that was kind of bowling in the back, and I went through college and started my career. And then about 13 or 14 years ago, I was at a dinner party at a friend's house and ran into a friend who was frequenting the auction houses, and he was authenticating art, nothing to do with the Titanic. But I was making small talk with him, and I just said, hey, if you ever trip over anything Titanic related, pulling from my interest from my childhood, let me know. And so about a year later, he said, hey, there's a auction coming up celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Titanic that you ought to know about, and so I've ordered a catalog for you. So Andrew Aldridge, who's joining us today by Zoom from London, England, he holds 2 Titanic auctions each year, and this was my first time to, I guess, meet Andrew. And over the last 12, 13 years, we've become friends and acquaintances. And Andrew is, from my perspective, nobody knows more about Titanic and the artifacts, where they're located, who has them, where they came from, than Andrew. He's been doing it for a long, long time. He's with Henry Aldridge and Sons auctioneer. They're outside of London, England, which is great because it's very close in proximity to where a lot of the passengers and crew came from. And so I'll let Andrew get into detail about that. But because he has these 2 auctions, he's met a lot of interesting people. He's developed a lot of knowledge about the Titanic, the ship, and the artifacts themselves. He is married to his wife, Chrissy, and they have 2 daughters. And I think Andrew is on here. Andrew, can you hear us?
I can, Billy. How are you?
All right, good afternoon. Good evening in the UK.
It's good evening.
Your time.
Good
That's
evening.
right. That's right.
Thank you for a very humbling introduction.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us and derailing your dinner.
My pleasure. My only regret is I'm not eating your lunch.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's right. It's good here. I told Andrew that Rotary is hosted at the President Clinton Library, and he'd have to come over here sometime in person, but we're glad to have him joining us. So Andrew, for the benefit of those in the room that don't know the history of the Titanic, give us a little background.
Okay, the Titanic, well, let's distill it to its basic essence, if you like. Here's a ship that the keel was laid in 1909, so what, 113, 114 years ago. And Titanic was designed to be the biggest and the best of its era. The giveaway is in the name, Titan. These ships were named after gods. You had Titanic, you had her elder sister, Olympic, and the youngest of the sisters was initially to be called Gigantic, renamed Britannic after the Titanic disaster. And these ships were brought in to compete with the Cunarders. So you had White Star owned Titanic, you had Cunard owned the Lusitania and the Mauretania. And these were the fastest ships of their era, and Titanic and Olympic were designed to compete with those in luxury, not so much in speed, but to offer unparalleled luxury going across the Atlantic. Everyone knows about Titanic, but her sister Olympic was actually initially designed to be the more glamorous of the 2. She was launched in 1910 to great fanfare. Her hull was painted white, so it would show to photographers, the size and the extravagance of this ship, that it was bigger than the Lusitania, bigger than the Mauretania. But no one knows about Olympic, or very few people know. And here's a ship that went from 1911. She served in World War One. She actually rammed a German U-boat in World War One, sank a U-boat. But we all know the word Titanic. And Titanic, in effect, it captures the imagination on many, many levels. She was launched on May the 31st, 1911. She had her sea trials April the 2nd, 1912. She left Southampton April the 10th, 1912. And that's basically where the story starts. You had over 2,200 people on the ship. Every man, woman, and child had a story to tell. You had some of the richest people alive on board. You had J.J. Astor. You had Isidor Straus, who owned Macy's department store. You had Benjamin Guggenheim. You have Molly Brown. You know, these are names, if you've watched the Titanic movie, James Cameron's Titanic movie, that people know. But equally, you had cross-section of society. You had poor immigrants who were coming to America to live the American dream, to start a new life. Literally 10 miles from where I'm sitting now, you have the Goodwin family. This was mum, dad, and 6 children traveling third class to start a new life in the US. All of them were lost. And that reflects the Titanic story. It's quite simply, it's people. Every man, woman, and child, as I said, had a story to tell, and that's why people collect.
And how much we talk about how I mean, this was over, well, it was 112 years ago this next coming week. And although most in the room know about it, or at least know about the movie, tell me about what, expand on why is it that it's so intriguing, and have different events such as the movie and more recently the implosion of the sub. Tell me about how that has impacted what you see.
Okay, let's talk about why people collect, first of all. And that's quite a simple answer. What the memorabilia does, it gives us a connection back to 1912. We can read a letter that's written by someone on the Titanic. They're talking about, for instance, a first-class passenger. They're talking about what they're eating, for instance. Some passengers talked about they could smell the fresh paint. It gives us a snapshot into that time. And that's really why people collect the memorabilia. It gives us that link back to 1912, whether it be through menus. We sold a menu last year. And I will give you a read you the fare that was on the show. So on dinner on April the 11th, 1912, this gives you a real, we talk about snapshots, what people were eating, the opulence, the sheer richness of the dishes on offer. You could have oysters, you could have salmon, you could have whitebait, you could have tornadoes of beef, you could have pigeon, you can have lamb, you can have chicken, various steaks, you can have duck. And what this menu is doing is giving us that basic link that if you wanted to, you could create a meal from the Titanic. And there is nothing, food is that base instinct that holds us all together. And to experience what people were eating then is one of the reasons why people collect menus, for instance. But going through, we look at the various class systems involved. First, second, and class. We talk about J.J. Astor, the richest man in the world at the time, worth several $billion. Then you have Strauss. You say, we have Benjamin Guggenheim. We talk about the Goodwins. There are tales of heroism. There are tales of cowardice. It's one of those stories that people are linked to. We say about there's 2,200 people on board that ship. Every man, woman, and child had a story to tell. And in essence, the memorabilia, we tell those stories through. We're keeping the names and the memories of those people alive with that memorabilia. We fast forward to the present day. We talk about the camera. You mentioned yourself about A Night to Remember, that was the catalyst for you to collect. I remember personally as a 10-year-old boy watching Raise the Titanic. This was another movie that came out in the very early 80s. The gentleman who owned the film company, he famously said it would have been cheaper to raise the ... Titanic than make this movie. They lost millions of dollars in the 80s on this. But that particular film, it flicked something in my head. It brought something alive. It brought the ship alive to me. You know, that was the main reason why I'm fortunate enough that my job, I handle this material all the time. I meet incredibly interesting people across all walks of life through this business. And obviously we get the Cameron movie happens in the 1990s. Again, this served a massive upsurge in interest in the movie. It brought how much, what was it? Made about $3 billion, I think it was. Hundreds of millions of people watched that film. So it created further interest. And of course, we fast forward to the tragic events of last year, where several people were lost on the Titan. The days after that horrific accident, my website spiked over 500% in terms of views. And again, that illustrates the power of this story.
Talk about, since you deal in the artifacts, for the benefit of those in the room who probably don't know this, distinguish the difference between those artifacts which are retrieved from the ocean floor and other artifacts which are traded between individuals.
There's a massive distinction. When Robert Ballard discovered the Titanic back in 1985, ironically, he was on a mission for the US Navy at the time to locate two nuclear attack subs that were lost in the 1960s. And he made an agreement with the US Navy that if he found these subs, they would give him whatever additional time they'd allocated to try and find the wreck of the Titanic, which he did. And we have now a situation where over 6,000 artifacts have been brought to the surface, but they were only allowed to be brought to the surface under the specific reasoning that they could never be sold. They were brought up for posterity, because at the end of the day, 12,000 feet down, people can't see them. Whereas the company that salvaged them, RMS Titanic, they hold exhibitions globally. For instance, if you're in Vegas, you could go to the pyramid in Vegas and you can see the big piece, which is this massive piece of Titanic's hull. There are personal effects and so forth. Dollars, there's the bell, numerous other objects that can be seen. And most importantly, they're preserved. But under the jurisdiction,
Might have lost him for a second. So while we reconnect with him,
they were only given permission to stay down there. They were just going to corrode. Then you go to the next type of market, which is the material that we sell. These are items that were on the Titanic when she sank, but the other items that were on her when she left Southampton, when she left Cherbourg, and personal possessions of the passengers. So you've got a very distinct line that is built.
tell us about some of your favorite finds. I mean, I know you've got a bunch of them, but what are some of the more interesting things that you have handled as part of your auctions?
You know, I'm lucky enough to have handled, without sounding arrogant or blowing my own trumpet is an English term for you, you know, I've handled the very best Titanic memorabilia sold for the last 20 years. Whether it be letters, whether it be woodwork, whether it be keys. There is a very fine set of keys living in Arkansas, I hasten to add. Deck plans, menus, etc. I think for me, there was one particular piece that I always thought was fascinating. And it was a silver flask, a silver hip flask. So you keep whiskey, brandy, whatever in it. It was owned by a woman called Helen Churchill Candy. She was a great pioneer of her own right. She was an authoress in 1912, a travel authoress. and she was traveling back to the US because her son had been involved in a plane crash, which obviously in 1912 is fairly remarkable anyway. And she was in her 40s, and she formed a friendship with a group of people on board, never met them before. And one of them was called Edward Kent. And her and Edward got on very well. And as the ship was sinking, she had a personal heirloom, a family heirloom with her. And she decided that Edward, being a big, strong man, was more likely to survive than she was, i.e., he could swim, he was a big, strong chap, etc., etc. So she gave this silver flask to Edward to give to her son when he lived because she was fairly confident that she would survive herself. Needless to say, she survived and Edward didn't. So the flask was sent back by Edward or Edward's widow, I should say, by Edward's widow to Helen when she got back to America. But what was remarkable about the flask is quite literally a standard flask would arc out like so. Whereas this flask was actually dented in the middle. And what had happened was the water pressure had actually pushed it into hole in effect. And this was sent back by Edward's widow with a note to Helen to say that it was her property and I'm sure her husband would have wanted her to have it. And the Titanic story is full of little tales like this. We talk about the memorabilia and it keeping the memory alive of passengers and crew on board. And here we are in 2024 talking about Helen Churchill Candy, who probably, to be fair, 99% of people have never even heard, yet her memory is being kept alive by that piece of memorabilia. And that's probably one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia. However, that will lead us on to the most remarkable piece of memorabilia that I've ever had the privilege of selling. And I'm lucky enough to have sold some amazing items over the years. And that was the Titanic violin.
This would be the violin that Wallace Hartley, the band leader, was playing.
That's correct. That's correct. And there's a fantastic story behind that. So we sold the violin in 2013. So 11 years ago. Time flies by at a terrible level. And I received a phone call back in 2006 from a gentleman that said he had some Titanic memorabilia. Would I travel up and have a look at it? And it was about a 2-hour drive. So I thought, yep, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I drove to this gentleman's house, knocked on the door, went into the house. He sat down, he made me a cup of coffee, and he said, these are the items that I've got. And he brought them out, and you get those moments when your jaw hits the floor. This was one of those moments. He brings this leather bag with WHH on the front of it. And WHH is Wallace Henry Hartley. And Wallace Hartley was Titanic's bandmaster. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting. And then he opens the bag. And out of the bag, he brings a violin. So at this point, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is just Wallace Hartley's violin, no more, no less, a fascinating object. And then we start talking about the story. And it transpires that the violin was handed down by Maria Robinson. And Maria Robinson was Wallace Hartley's fiancée. They were in love. She was the daughter of a mill owner. He was a musician, playing various lines. And the violin was, when Maria died, it was handed to a local chapter of the Salvation Army. And the vendor's mother, she played the violin. And in the late 30s, it was handed to her with this bag with a note that basically said it was unplayable, but hopefully you can mend it. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a really good story, but as we know, stories are one thing, fact is another. We spent 7.5 years from that point determining that this violin was indeed the violin that was played by Wallace Hartley as the Titanic sank. We had a barrage of experts globally that literally ranged from the musical expert at Sotheby's through to a jewelry expert who was able to identify there's a little fish plate on the top of the violin that said to Wallace, upon the occasion of our engagement, from Mariah. And most importantly, this is where the really cool stuff comes in. When we were selling this in 2013, Good Morning America interviewed me. And I showed them all the provenance, went into all of the details, and the reporter was like, oh my God, this is like CSI. This is so cool. And what we were able to do is we approached Oxford University and the British government, one of the British government labs, and they were able to analyze the crystalline metal deposits on this fish plate to confirm that they had indeed been immersed in the North Atlantic through diatoms. It got very, very complicated. You know, I'm a simple person. I'm not a scientist. However, the provenance and the reports that came back from, again, Oxford University proved it beyond all reasonable doubt. And we were able to present to the world Wallace Hartley's violin. And another fascinating element of the research was when I was young and reckless, I hurt my knee playing sport, and I had a scan on my knee, went in through the polo mint, so to speak. They were able to scan my knee, and the same specialist that helped me with my knee, I spoke to and said, just a thought, would you mind putting the violin into the machine so we can actually get a photograph of under the skin, under the hood, if you like? And he was like, yeah, no worries. So we brought it along. It went into the scanner and they were able to give us 3D scans that actually showed how the violin had been repaired. Because it's the first thing you think, violins and the North Atlantic, they don't mix. You know, it should effectively be mush. But he was able to show where it had been repaired. So effectively, we had this 7.5 year odyssey that we were able to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that that violin was indeed the violin that played as the Titanic was sinking. And as a consequence, it's still the single most valuable piece of Titanic memorabilia. And it's sold in 2013 for $1.7 million.
And all from a cold call to see if you'd be interested in traveling a couple of hours to see it.
That's it. That's it.
What
That's why in my job, you never judge a book by its cover. You know, you talk to everyone, you follow up every call because you literally don't know that, you know, you get that one call that comes in as you're walking out the door and you think, hey, let's answer the call. You know, let's see what it is. And, you know, and that's a classic example of it. So pretty much for me, that was one of my seminal moments in my career so far. And it was you know, very proud, fantastic for my business. And, you know, it was a great honor that my name, my company's name, my father's name, who was the founder of the company, you know, our names are forever intertwined with the single most valuable piece of Titanic memorabilia ever sold.
In a little context, that violin, along with many of the other artifacts, were retrieved by the recovery ships.
Correct.
Shortly after the Titanic sank, which does help with trying to determine authenticity, since there were records from that time.
Completely. What you had is you had the McKay Bennett and the Minia. They were the principal ships. They were cable laying ships, and they were asked by the White Star Line to go to the wreck site and to pick up the bodies of those who were lost. Many were buried at sea, and equally some were brought home. But what happened is you had a body effects list. And the body effects list, everyone was allocated a number. For instance, you had a gentleman called John Gill. John Gill was number 155. And we talk about interesting stories. John Gill was married to his wife Winnie on February the 14th, 1912, Valentine's Day. And they were going to go to America to start a new life, but they were going to sell her father-in-law's business first of all. The father-in-law's business sale fell through. So the daughter, Winnie, she stays back. John travels on a Titanic. Excuse me. He's a second-class passenger. He's going to start that new life to prepare the groundwork for their new life abroad. Sadly, he is one of those that's lost. His body's recovered by the Mackay Bennett. Given that number 155, all his possessions are sent back to his widow. The widow, a month later, receives a letter from the White Star Line saying that we found your husband's body. We'd like £20 for the return of it, please. Yeah, unbelievable in today's world. You just can't comprehend it. At that point, poor John had already been buried at sea. So it was a forlorn hope anyway. But we go back to that body recovery list. Everything on John's person was named. We move on slightly to that fabulous set of keys that live in Arkansas. That set of keys were owned by a gentleman called Edmund Stone. Exactly the same happened with Edmund Stone. His personal possessions were sent back to his widow. That set of keys are named on the items that were recovered from Mr. Stone. So that gives us that word provenance. Provenance, history, and provenance is key to every type of memorabilia. But with Titanic memorabilia, it's especially important. And it's what makes these items worth the sums that they are. I work, if you like, on a legal premise. It has to go beyond all reasonable doubt. When I'm offered a piece of memorabilia to sell, I will play devil's advocate. I will try to find reasons why it's fake. If I can't find those reasons, then we move on. And when you have a scenario where an item is on the body recovery list, it makes my job an awful lot easier.
But I want to allow a little bit of time for questions and answers before time runs out. But quickly, you have an auction coming up April the 27th. Tell us about the marquee item, which coincides with our violin.
Well, we've got two marquee items. The first one, we talked about, I mentioned briefly that there was a leather bag with the initials WHH. That was the bag that the violin was kept in, and it saved it from the North Atlantic. It has two big straps on, and what happened as the ship was sinking, Wallace placed his violin in this bag and he strapped the violin to his body. We sold that bag in 2013, and we are reoffering that bag for the sale for the first time in 11 years in this auction. That's one of the marquee pieces. It gives you a tangible link to the single most important piece of Titanic memorabilia ever sold. It's a phenomenal item. My pre-sale estimate on that is between $120,000 and $180,000. It's in the top, it's a blue chip piece. It's in the top 0.5% of Titanic memorabilia. The second marquee piece, which is my front cover lot for the sale, is the pocket watch that was owned by John Jacob Astor, the richest man in the world at that time. And it was the pocket watch that he had on his person when Titanic sank. It's a phenomenal piece of memorabilia. That bears the same estimate, 120 to 180. And again, these are pieces of history. They are tangible pieces of history, which is why they are so collectible.
All right, we're going to open it up for questions and answers.
all the things that they did wrong that night to screw it all up. There were so many things that had to happen. And am I on? Oh,
Yep.
yes. So many things that had to happen to all go wrong, but I'll be brief. I bet most of you did not know that if the Titanic had hit the iceberg straight on, studies have shown by engineers, it would have taken 2 weeks to sink. Everyone would have gotten off safely. What they did was the worst thing possible to port around it. They exposed the entire right side of the ship. All the rivets popped all the way down the underbelly of the ship. And the water is able to go over the bulkheads, which were not designed high enough by Thomas Andrews. So just all sorts of interesting things, about that. But anyhow, and also the book is great by Walter Lord too, A Night to Remember. It's a good book to read as well. Question is, I've read that there's a billionaire in Australia who is going to rebuild an exact replica of the Titanic to take people on voyages and cruises and all that. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have heard that. Gentleman concerned, Clive Palmer. Equally, he was looking to build a Jurassic Park. So you can want to do many things. However, actually wanting to and being able to, in terms of practical terms, can be quite different. If, of course, he does this, it would be a very interesting proposition. Whether you would want to sail on Titanic 2, that would be, again, it's a conversation for that people would form their own opinions of. If it happens, good luck to him. Whether it does or not, we'll see.
One more question. Yes.
How are the letters and menus and the paper things? How are those recovered?
That's a really good question, and there's a very easy answer to it. What Titanic was, she's RMS Titanic. She had a designation, so Royal Mail Steamer. So she started in Southampton. She went to Cherbourg. After Cherbourg in France, she went to Queenstown in Ireland. After Queenstown, obviously, she goes into history. But one of her primary tasks was to carry mail bags from A to B. So 95% or probably 98% of the printed material that we see today came off Titanic in Queenstown by way of post. There are a few examples of things that did come off with passengers. For instance, April the 14th menus from the last dinner. So what generally happened was men were dressed up in their dining suits. They're very smart suits. Ladies, again, in very formal attire. You had your dinner. You took your menu. You placed that menu in the inside of your pocket. You thought nothing else of it. Obviously, then Titanic hits the berg. You go onto the deck. Your wife is cold. You have your coat on. You give your coat to your wife. She gets on a lifeboat. They get to New York, they get onto the Carpathia, open up husband's jacket, and there's a Titanic menu. And generally speaking, that was the way that menus survived from April the 14th. There was one documented example of a letter that was on a victim's body. We sold that letter. It belonged to a man called Alexander Holverson. It was dated on April the 13th, and that was actually documented as coming off his body. But that's the only example of its type ever to have survived.
And everybody give a big round of applause to Andrew. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thank you, Billy.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Andrew, so much for joining us from London. That was really fascinating. And we should do a Club 99 outing on that Titanic that's going to be built. I'm there. Is anybody else going to join me? Okay. I see. No, I see. Okay, Andrew. That's great. We got one person. Okay, awesome. Thank you again, Billy. Billy gave this idea to our programming committee. I had no idea that he was a collector of Titanic memorabilia. It's so fascinating. So thank you very much for pulling that together. Before you guys, and we'll send you this, Andrew, we have a little gift for you. We have a new mural in downtown Little Rock that we commissioned that is all about the fun that we have in Little Rock. And so we'll have a little thing for your desk, but it's just a reminder that you really can have fun from many things, and collecting is definitely one of those. I'm sure that you have a ton of fun doing what you do.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, next week is another not to be missed meeting. We're going to be learning from a panel, and it's going to be an economic update of things happening in Midtown. So we'll be revisiting some of the tornado redevelopment. We'll be talking about retail growth, particularly Park Plaza. So lots of cool things. If you're a Midtown lover, you'll not want to miss that panel. As a reminder, board members, we have a meeting right after this over at the Rotary office. So I hope to see you there. And be on the lookout for your newsletter this week. It's going to have all those links to all the fun that's happening in this month and into May. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.